Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into the life and legacy of someone absolutely pivotal to modern India, Durgabai Deshmukh. She wasn't just part of the freedom struggle. She was an architect, a force of nature. People called her the Iron Lady. And, well, you'll soon see why.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to do here. Go beyond just the basics. We've looked at biographies, sure, but also policy papers, women's journals from the time, trying to piece together how she actually designed India's social fabric, especially concerning women's rights and roles.
And it's quite a story, because her early actions, they weren't just bold, they were audacious, really. We want to explore how that initial spark, that fire, translated into lasting institutional change.
Okay, so Durgabai Deshmukh, her maiden name, born July 15th, 1909. And right away, her choices tell you everything. She was married at 8 years old, very young, yes, but common then. But the key thing is, when she came of age, she refused to live with her husband. She chose education instead.
Which is incredible for the time, and the sources say her father and brother actually supported her.
They did. Which was, frankly, revolutionary. It shows this deep-seated belief in her right to, determine her own path, prioritize learning.
And that commitment turned political very fast. At 12, she leaves school.
Right, but it wasn't about dropping out. It was a protest, a very deliberate act against the British pushing English medium education.
And she didn't just protest passively. She actively built something else. She founded the Balika Hindi Pathshala, a Hindi school for girls, promoting the national language as resistance.
Exactly. Which leads us to that famous story from 1923. It really kind of sums her up. She's only 14, volunteering at the Indian National Congress Conference in Kakinada, managing the Khadi exhibition.
Right, the homespun cloth exhibition. And her rule was strict. Everyone needs a ticket, no exceptions. Then Jawaharlal Nehru shows up.
Yeah, Nehru, already a huge figure, tries to walk in without a ticket, and Durgabai, she stops him, flat out refuses entry.
Incredible. Just stands her ground.
Completely. Until the organizers rush over and buy a ticket for him, she wouldn't budge, under immense pressure, facing this national leader.
And Nehru's reaction? He wasn't annoyed.
No, quite the opposite. He publicly praised her. Her courage, her commitment to duty. It wasn't just a funny story. It really set the tone for her whole life, her approach to rules and responsibility.
That's fascinating. That integrity became her trademark.
Precisely. That rules are rules attitude no matter who you are. She took that same fire into the freedom movement proper, became a devout follower of Gandhi, practiced Satyagraha, organized women for the Salt Satyagraha down in Madras.
And paid the price, right? The British jailed her multiple times.
3 times, yeah, between 1930 and 1933. So she had this raw, defiant energy. But what's interesting is what she did next. It showed real strategic thinking. So after prison, she realized, okay, protest is vital, but building a nation, that takes knowledge, takes understanding the system. So she pivots.
From activist to academic.
Pretty much. She dives into education, gets her BA, then an MA in political science from Andhra University, and then, crucially, a law degree from Madras University in 1942.
So she becomes an advocate in the Madras High Court, just as India is on the cusp of independence. Smart timing.
Extremely smart. And that legal training, it made her invaluable. She gets elected to the Constituent Assembly from Madras province. And here's something amazing. She was the only woman chosen for the panel of chairmen in the entire assembly.
Hold on. The only woman. In that room, with all those experienced male politicians and lawyers, how did she achieve that kind of position, that kind of respect so quickly?
It had to be her reputation, right? For being tough, yes, but also fair and knowledgeable. She clearly commanded respect, and she used that influence straight away, especially on the language issue. Very contentious.
What was her stance there?
She actually proposed Hindustani, that blend of Hindi and Urdu, as the national language, but she wasn't doctrinaire about it. She saw how forcefully Hindi was being pushed in the South and worried it would split the country.
So what did she suggest?
A pause, a 15-year status quo. Basically, give non-Hindi speakers time to adapt, to learn, without feeling like their culture was being overridden. It was a really pragmatic, unifying move, showed real empathy.
That theme of duty, of principle we saw with the Nehru story, it carried into her personal life, too, especially after marrying C.D. Deshmukh in 1953. He was a big deal RBI governor, then finance minister.
A huge deal. Nehru himself was a witness at the wedding. What she did next is, well, almost unthinkable today.
What happened?
She was serving on a finance committee. Her husband gets appointed as its chairperson. And Durgabai, she resigns immediately.
Just like that. To avoid any possible conflict of interest.
Exactly. Any hint of impropriety. Think about the power that marriage gave her access to, and she chose institutional integrity over personal position. It's genuinely remarkable.
Wow, that level of ethical rigor.
And she wrote about it later in her autobiography, Chintaman and I. It wasn't for show. It was core to her being. She'd gone from fighting the law to writing the law, but that sense of duty, it never wavered.
Okay, so Durgabai clearly understood power wasn't just about laws on paper. It was about building things, institutions that last, that actually change lives. She's often called the mother of social welfare in India. Where did that work start?
It started regionally, actually, with the Andhra Mahila Sabha, the AMS. She founded it around 1937-38. And this wasn't just charity work, it was a proper social work movement aimed squarely at making women self-reliant.
Oh, what kind of things did the AMS do?
Oh, it was comprehensive. They set up schools like the Andhra Education Society in Delhi, later on nursing homes, hostels for women, but also, crucially, vocational training, healthcare. The goal wasn't just temporary help. It was about building the structures women needed to support themselves.
A blueprint for empowerment, really. And she scaled this up.
Yes. After she wasn't elected to Parliament in 1952, a bit of a setback. Maybe she was nominated to the Planning Commission, right at the center of national policymaking.
And what did she push for there?
A dedicated national policy for social welfare. Her advocacy, her pushing, led directly to the creation of the Central Social Welfare Board, the CSWB, in 1953.
And she became its first chair. How did the CSWB work?
Well, the clever part was how it leveraged what was already there. It didn't try to build a massive new bureaucracy from scratch. Instead, it funded and coordinated thousands of existing voluntary organizations across India.
So using the grassroots network.
Exactly, allowing for really targeted support, education, training, rehab for women, children, people with disabilities. It was basically taking the AMS model and applying it nationwide. Very strategic.
And her focus on structures continued in education.
Definitely. In 1958, she chaired the National Council on Women's Education, the first big government committee on it after independence.
What came out of that?
Some really fundamental recommendations. Prioritize girls' education, make education free up to Class 8, set up dedicated departments for women's education in government. She saw education as critical infrastructure for the nation.
And finally, her legal background came into play again, didn't it? With family law.
Yes, the family courts. This came from a trip she took to China in 1953. She saw these specialized courts dealing just with family issues, divorce, custody, maintenance.
And she thought India needed that.
Immediately. She saw how regular courts could be slow, intimidating, and often disadvantageous for women in family disputes. She argued tirelessly for specialized courts, laying all the groundwork. It took time, but it eventually led to the Family Courts Act in 1984. She was designing mechanisms for justice that understood women's specific needs.
It's incredible looking back at everything she built, these huge institutional pillars, and yet here we are, decades later, still talking about the struggle for women's political representation. Where do things stand now?
It's dark, yeah. Well, it's still quite stark. Despite everything Durgabai and others fought for, women hold only about 15% of the seats in the Lok Sabha. That's low, globally speaking. It shows that progress in social welfare doesn't just automatically equal political power.
Which brings us right up to date. With the Women's Reservation Bill, the Nari Shakti Van Adhiniam passed in 2023.
Exactly. A potentially huge piece of legislation. It mandates reserving 1/3 of seats in the Lok Sabha and state assemblies for women, with subquotas for SC/ST women, too. It feels like exactly the kind of structural intervention Durgabai would have championed.
There's a catch, isn't there? A big one. The law is passed, but it's not happening yet.
That's the frustrating part. Implementation depends on two things happening first. The national census needs to be completed, and then a delimitation exercise, basically, redrawing constituency boundaries based on that new census data.
Okay, so the last census, 2021, was delayed. Delimitation is linked to the census after 2026. What does that actually mean for when this reservation kicks in?
Well, the practical reality is it's pushed way down the road. Critics argue it might not actually happen until after the next census, the one post-2031, and the delimitation that follows that, so potentially a decade or more away.
So a landmark bill, passed with much fanfare, is effectively on hold for years.
Yes. And it feels like the kind of institutional inertia Durgabai spent her life fighting against. You have the policy, but the procedures delay it indefinitely.
Which fuels that whole debate, doesn't it?
Oh,
Supporters say reservation is vital precisely because the system won't change on its own. It's needed to shift power dynamics, bring different perspectives.
Right. While critics talk about voter choice or merit, some analysis suggests the real issue, perhaps unspoken, is simply the reluctance of current parliamentarians, mostly men, to give up seats. It's that institutional self-preservation instinct kicking in again. #, outro.
So we've followed Durgabai Deshmukh's path, from that fiercely principled teenager standing up to Nehru to the master strategist building India's social safety net and shaping its legal framework. She truly refused to be limited by circumstance.
Yeah, her whole life seems to embody her own words. Do not be a slave to circumstances. Make circumstances favorable. For her, that meant building the institutions, the schools, the legal aid, the social boards that would make circumstances favorable for countless Indian women.
She fought tooth and nail against institutional roadblocks to get women a seat at the table, a permanent, powerful, ethically grounded seat. So thinking about her legacy and looking at the current situation with the Women's Reservation Bill passed, yet delayed, what does her struggle teach us? What does it tell us about the necessity of structural change versus procedural delays? And maybe more importantly, what's the real human cost measured across generations of postponing that kind of fundamental equality? Something to really think about.